next step, I mean, I think I'm kind of as far as I'm really willing to go with them being introduced to each other. You think that maybe he growled yesterday, right?
Maybe. It kind of sounded like it. Like he makes like a bunch of weird noises anyway sometimes.
Sure.
And I was like...
What was the scenario?
He and Frankie were in bed. He was in his bassinet. He like makes these noises in his sleep. And some of them are like high pitched.
Yep.
And he did that. And then it sounded like a low growl. And it was just like one short one. And I like rolled over. And he was looking at him in his bassinet. But like his ears weren't pinned back or anything. Like he didn't look like he was like mad.
Yeah.
I don't know. But then I made him leave the room.
Sure.
Nothing like real serious, but and I guess you're not even necessarily like 100% sure. But
That's the biggest thing, you know what I mean? So how long has the baby been back for now? What, a week or 2? 2. Has it been 2 weeks now?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And what's your routines been with the baby? I mean, is the baby pretty much like in like the crib or the carrier you guys are holding like pretty much all the time, right?
Yeah. Or like a swing thing.
Yeah. So, you know, at this stage, this is why I always say, like, you know, take your time with things, because it's not that he necessarily has to be in a bed the whole time, but there still really shouldn't be much actual interaction happening. You know what I mean? Like, he's still getting used to the baby, and it's going to take a while before he's completely comfortable with the baby, right? So I would say, you said you've been giving him a little bit more freedom. What does that kind of look like?
I just let him like roam around a bit more.
Sure.
If the baby's like in something that he's like down close to the ground,
Yes.
we make sure that he doesn't have access to him.
Good.
Like if he gets anywhere like within 10 feet, we'll like let him know like, hey, don't
Sure.
go there. But he's still not tethered.
Yep.
Maybe 2, 3, 4 times he's sniffed around me and the general area when I was holding the baby.
Yep.
And I would not worry about that at all.
Sure.
But he doesn't have like any sort of unfettered access to it.
Yeah. And really, that's kind of the next step. You know what I mean? Like, you're kind of just a step ahead of the game. As we start off, usually first couple of weeks, pretty much bed stay or down stay anytime that the baby is out, right? Just letting him get acclimated, stuff like that. Once we see that he's not stressed out in that situation, right? When we put him on there, he kind of just chills or doesn't seem overly concerned with what's going on with the baby, right? Stuff like that. Then we start having him have a little bit more freedom of he could be free, but only in situations where, like you were saying, he doesn't really have access to go like up to the baby, you know what I mean? Or if there is a situation like, say, this right now, I would create a perimeter of like 5 feet around the baby where, we're enforcing he's not allowed to go within that, whether by just body blocking it and just if he figures that out, or by giving an actual correction when he gets within that perimeter, one or the other, obviously depending on how he responds to it. And then you roll with that for a little bit, you know what I mean? And you'll notice his comfort level will improve as you go. I mean, in the last 2 weeks, what kind of have you seen like a change in his behavior around the baby at all, or how he seemed? You feel like he's loosened up, or?
Yeah. Before, when we first brought him home, he would like shake, like, and
Sure.
like noise he would make.
Yeah.
And now he just
chills.
Be passed out into bed.
Yep.
Not caring.
And that's exactly what we want to see, you know? So now we need to see a similar vibe out of him when he's free, right? Where he's not even interested in going up and checking out the baby because he's like, oh, it's there, right? It's not for me right now still, you know? And then the important thing, and we talked about this very briefly, I think when you picked up or at some point, is you go through this in stages, right? So right now, baby's not very mobile, right? Baby's pretty much going where we put the baby, and that's about it, right? Once the baby starts crawling around a little bit, moving, stuff like that, that's where we move to the next step of we take a step back and we go back to, okay, we need to now get him used to these new motions, new sounds, things like that, and we go back to the bed stay for a little bit, right? Once he seems chill with the crawling around, stuff like that, then we give him the freedom again with the same kind of perimeter, right? Then when we move to the walking and talking stage, we typically do the same thing one more time, and then usually at that point we're kind of in the clear with things, you know? But it's very dog dependent, right? Because every dog moves at a different pace with it. How has Frankie been with the baby?
Oh, Frankie doesn't.
Doesn't care at all? So good, obviously. Yeah. So obviously Frankie is not as much of like an insecure dog like Magellan is. Frankie was just kind of the sassy one.
Yeah.
So, you know, obviously Frankie moved along a little bit quicker, where you probably can move through those steps a lot faster. I would still encourage, obviously, as you go through those stages of the crawling, the walking, stuff like that, that you similarly do that with Frankie as well, just like keeping some distance and a little bit of chill and stuff like that. But that's really it, and you got to work at his pace. Like, you made the call on, like, you know, it seemed like he was pretty comfortable, so you decided to start giving him some freedom, and you also made the right call on when you did that, still having some boundaries set. But you got to kind of get comfortable with rolling with that for a little bit. And whether it's anxiety or whether it was a little growl that you heard or whatever it may be in the situation you talked about the other day, yesterday, that you saw, you said that was in the evening again? You guys were all hanging out in the bed? Or?
Morning.
Oh, okay, morning, whatever. So it was in the bedroom though, you said? Yeah, so in the bedroom, it sounds like maybe he's still not totally chill yet. He's still a little concerned about the crying and stuff like that. So I would still play it cool in that scenario. But outside of that scenario, it sounds like just day to day, he's pretty comfortable, you know? So that's really what, I mean, you really just got to roll with that for a little bit, just kind of see what you get with it. I wouldn't be overly concerned about much past that. I mean, even hanging out here, like, he doesn't seem, and walking across the way and stuff, it's not like he was like, oh, what's in here? Like, he seemed pretty cool with it, you know? So I guess, what kind of questions about anything can I answer for you that you may have? I mean, obviously we'll just run him through some stuff, make sure he looks good, but I want to see, you know, how I could assist you guys at least feeling as confident as needed, you know, moving forward again here.
I think my biggest question is, like, what's your take on his crying when he cries? Do you think it's anxiety, or do you think he's like, oh, there's a human that's sad, I should be sad too?
No, it's not as deep as that. Yeah. It's anxiety, right? Like, that's all it is. He doesn't know what's going on, you know, and you know, he's the kind of dog, as are a lot of dogs, that when they don't understand something, they get concerned, you know what I mean? So it's best, if I do see any situations like that, just to give some sort of direction, you know what I mean? Whether that's get him focused in on something else, right, whatever. You know, give him something else to focus on so he's not so focused on that, so.
No.
We see it similarly. I was working with a dog earlier today that's like dog reactivity. We were at the park and we were doing downstays and stuff around other dogs, and when other dogs would start going by and making noise, he would start whining and, like, you know, getting himself all anxious and stuff, and all it was just, I don't know what's happening right now. This new scenario is concerning to me, and it's just, they're verbalizing that, right? They're letting it known. So it's not a problem. It's not something that I'm going to correct for or anything like that, but it means that he's looking for some sort of direction from you guys, you know?
I am not using a shock collar to correct him when he goes around the baby. Is that?
It's fine.
Okay.
Unless you need to. Just keep in mind, a lot of people, I'm assuming your mentality behind that is, I don't want to associate that with being around the baby. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, which is normal, right? And there is a little bit of truth to that. Like, I don't want to create a super negative association with it. Just keep in mind, right, when we're giving corrections in general, whether I'm correcting him for reacting at a person or reacting at a dog or getting too close to the baby or whatever it may be, the correction we give is associated with the behavior he's doing, not with the thing he's around. You know what I mean? And yes, there is, like, if you do everything so incorrectly, and I was just like, every time he went up to the baby, tapping without any sort of direction and any sort of commands and stuff like that, sure, he may associate, I should just stay away from this area, but it's not going to be like, oh, the baby bit me, you know what I mean? Or this is like this bad, scary thing, you know? So I wouldn't overly concern yourself with that. But at this point, it doesn't sound like there's a need to give any corrections for that, you know? Aside from, like I said, as you're setting your perimeter, if he gets within that 5 feet or so, it's like, all right, well, I'm going to give a come command here, right? And if he doesn't respond to the come command, I am going to still give a correction right there. You know what I mean? But he'll associate that with not responding to that come command, not with the baby. So, and that's why, you know, as we've done a lot of training with him, it would be a different story if we just started training. He didn't know what the e-collar was and everything, but he knows what it is at this point, and he knows it's not this thing that's just like coming from outer space. So.